Oh, I'm so glad to have you back, Patty. We love to see you
It's
so
great
much.
to see you too.
So we're sitting here with Patty Erjavec, with Dr. Erjavec, who is the president of Pueblo Community College. And we are in the legislative session. And so you'll have to listen to the other episode when we were talking about the same bill. But the higher ed is out of this bill, and now it's on the counties. But before we get a little bit too into that, I sit on your community
Advisory Council.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. On the Community Advisory Council. And there was a moment in our meeting yesterday that it just did my heart so much good. You were talking about how happy you were for the spring fling and for everybody to be back there again. And you just got so happy, and I could see you getting emotional about it. And then me and my dumb questions, I was like, are you a little bit emotional about it? And then you did get a little bit emotional about it. But it was just, to me, it spoke so much of not just your spirit, but the spirit of our community leaders around. And, that's one of the things that drives me and keeps me wanting to be in this mess that we're in, is that everybody that we serve is serving their community in a really big way. And you're one of the best servants forever. So it's been so cool for me, because I started my career admiring you and what you did in your previous roles and but you've always served the community. But it was wonderful to just be reminded of that yesterday. But also, it's the reason we wanted to put so much effort into it. When you started to talk about this bill and what it was going to do, I could see you were near your breaking point. Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's true that I was extremely concerned. This is budget time, and we really weren't sure how much the General Assembly was going to send to higher ed, one thing, and then we weren't sure whether or not we were going to be allowed any sort of tuition increase. So coming off of 2 really, really very difficult years, not knowing what our budget was going to look like, and then hearing that there was this contemplation of a collective bargaining piece of legislation, you're right. It just about puts you over the edge.
Yeah.
Because without a doubt, with any sort of legislation or not, we care deeply about our employees, about our faculty and staff and our adjunct. And in all honesty, this piece of legislation is almost like putting the cart before the horse, in my opinion. First of all, we as a state need to decide whether or not higher education is really, really important.
Yeah.
And if it is really, really important, then it needs to be funded accordingly. And then if we are funded properly, then there are more resources for us to invest in our faculty, our part-time instructors, our APT. But right now, as you can appreciate, we are in a very turbulent time. And this whole great resignation isn't helping matters. And even, institution to institution, we're competing for that very small pool of talent. And it's almost like a bidding war.
Yeah.
Who can pay the most for an APT or a faculty? And then when you lose the bidding war, it just drives the faculty and the department chairs and the deans crazy, because now what? We are offering a program, we don't have the qualified instructor, and we have to start all over again. So,
and on top of that, enrollment numbers are down.
Yeah.
And that's, it's a result of COVID. We had Chancellor Garcia on the show yesterday, I think it was. Seems like it was a week ago already.
I know. It's been so hectic.
But, that's one thing that he was talking about, that, you are a tuition-driven institution, and enrollment is just down right now.
Right.
So it must have been hurtful to the point of it must have felt almost insulting for something like this to come up in light of all that. It's not like this is a secret that there's this kind of struggle, but them to say, we want to add burden to you, and the burden we want to add is because we don't think that you take care of your people. That had to have landed very personally.
Yeah.
That was a misguided interpretation. And I know there are many people that feel that government entities are wasteful. I'm here to tell you that community colleges do the very best with the least amount.
Yeah.
And just to give you an example, before I came here, I was at our physical therapy assistant celebration. Think about these students. When they started the program, we were in the middle of COVID. We had to split them up. There's 20 students in the class. We had to split them up, 10 in one room, 10 in another. These students never saw each other for the first year. Then reintegrating them back for year 2 for a very brief period of time before we sent them out on their clinicals. We're expecting greatness from these students. And our faculty did greatness.
Yeah.
And they never once hesitated. So those are the people that we want to celebrate. Of course we want to celebrate them. Of course we want to give them more. We want to give them all the goodness that life has to offer. We need the funding because it is absolutely unacceptable to put that on the backs of our students. And that's what would happen.
We couldn't agree more. And I wanted to get into that because I'm a little bit worried, and I think you are too, that they're not looking at these issues through that lens, through the lens of who it actually affects and who who would have to carry that burden. And that's the thing that we're a little bit worried about. The other thing, and this is the theme for the rest of this, and it's not just about this particular bill, but we're seeing this everywhere this session. It was that stakeholder process. So how much conversation did the sponsors of this bill have with you? Because one of the sponsors is from here. So how much conversation how much were you engaged when they were putting this together?
So Representative Esgar and I have not had any sort of face-to-face interaction. I attended the legislative breakfast. That's where I got information from my legislator. Of course, she has had conversations with Chancellor Garcia and the system and our lobbyists, but none. I have texted her and expressed my concern, and I want to tell you that this morning I also texted her and sent her a great big note of thank you and appreciation.
Yes.
So it's not just want,
right,
but also thanks you for listening and responding and taking our concerns into consideration.
So that's what we really wanted to highlight today with you. We are going to go ahead and push out the conversation with Chancellor Garcia, but we wanted, and especially because you and I have been interacting on this for the last several months, and Brian, we've been having these conversations a lot, and it was really important. And every time either one of us visited with Representative Esgar on this, that was the one thing that we said, and she would nod. I know she was listening to it, and it actually shows. We weren't entirely sure until yesterday when we saw the language of the bill that she was actually listening on how and negatively impactful this would have been for who we're supposed to be serving, which is students. So it's students, then it's faculty, and then it's the region. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad you said that. So thank you. And I appreciate you reaching out to her and telling her that.
Of course. And I'm sure that she heard many different perspectives from many, many different people. And so maybe a direct response was unrealistic. But again, I felt strongly enough to contact her, and I felt equally strong this morning to send a big thank you. Thank you for listening.
I'm glad because we're going to get into this battle with our county commissioner. So we're not ready to thank her yet, but right this minute,
well, higher ed is ready.
But higher ed. So we appreciate that you've done that on our behalf.
And again, I do think it's bittersweet because it's still my community. I know that our county commissioners are still very, very concerned. If resources have to be placed to fulfill this legislation, something's going to give.
Right.
And what services will be eliminated, what resources will be eliminated, those are still big concerns.
Yeah. Well, and Brian will say this quicker than I will usually because I'm one of those protective mama bear types. But, it was best intentions when it started, right? Mm-hmm. It was best intentions when it started. So we'll give them that, but it's that listening and showing that you're listening that actually makes a difference in the end. So, Dr. Erjavec, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you
for
so
coming
much.
back
and thank you, too, for everything you do to advocate on behalf of not only Pueblo, but all the counties that you serve. We sure do appreciate both of them.
Thank you.
Well,
very,
thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right.